Let us begin this ceremony of Havdalah, marking the end of one week and the beginning of a new one. And of course, we always begin by lighting our Havdalah candle with its many wicks. Each wick, each candle representing different parts of the Jewish community all coming together to make one greater, brighter flame. I'm going to invite everyone to mute if you haven't already. I can't see everyone all at once, so you might already be, which is great, just to make sound a little bit easier for right now. And we're going to get started as we prepare to say the blessing over grape juice or wine. And if you have some grape juice or wine around, feel free to go get a cup as we offer this blessing together. So, hold on one second. And welcome to everyone who just came in. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagapes borei peri hagapes ya la 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 we take that sweetness of that grape juice or wine. Sorry, this candle is splattering on me. Let's move it out of the way. We take that sweetness of the wine, we put it aside as we turn to our next blessing. Our blessing over the visamim, the spices. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei v'samim borei minei v'samim ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la. And we take in the aroma. For me, it's of cloves and cinnamon. For you, perhaps it's the same or something entirely different, but we take that scent of Shabbat, that scent of restoration, and we hope to bring it with us into the week ahead. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei ha'esh borei ha'esh ya la 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 that light to be captured, reflected in our fingernails. We hope that we can take some of the holiness with us as we offer our blessing for God who separates between the holy and the not yet holy. Shavua Tov, 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 Shavua Tov. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. We offer the words of Eliyahu Hanavi, prophet, who we hope will bring in understanding and compassion, justice and love. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishmi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hakilati. Bimhera v'yameinu, Yavo Eleinu, Imashiach ben David, Imashiach ben David. Miriam HaNeviah, Oz v'Zimra b'yadam, Miriam tirkot hitanu, lehagdil Zimrat olam. Bimhera v'yameinu, hiti v'yeinu, Helmei HaYeshua, Helmei HaYeshua. And before we turn to our That's So TBE kind of presentations from some of the amazing people who have been here in our community, let us offer our Shavua Tov song, wishing one another a great week ahead. The twisted candle brightens our hearts. Together we watch the Sabbath depart. Smell the spices, the taste the wine. The stars in the sky begin to shine. Shavua Tov, may you have a good week. May you find the happiness you seek. Shavua Tov, may your week be fine. May it be as sweet as the seventh wine. We say goodbye to a special friend as another Shabbat has come to an end. Shavua Tov are the words we speak. We say may you have a happy week. Shavua Tov, may you have a good week. May you find the happiness you seek. Shavua Tov, may your week be fine. May it be as sweet as the Sabbath wine. Shavua Tov. Shavua Tov, everyone. And tonight, really our focus for That's So TBE Havdalah is going to be on the 1970s, and we happen to have a few people here who can share some of their personal memories. But there is one picture in particular that I was sent that I promised to share. And can anyone guess who this is? Whoops. That's a couple months ago. Does anyone know who this is?
I have no idea.
It's Donna's.
Delicious.
It is. It is an amazing picture right on our bima years ago. What year was this?
1978.
1978. So right there, right in the middle of the 1970s.
A mere 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Very exciting. And in 2 weeks, I will happily offer you an anniversary blessing. That's really exciting.
Oh my
goodness.
I don't know.
So we have a few people here who are part of the community in the 1970s. Obviously, Don was here. Roz was a speaker last week with the last month, excuse me, with the 1960s, but I'm sure you have more to share from the 70s as well. And of course, you, Don. And then we're so grateful for Elaine and Morris Ash, who have memories that they wish to share with us as well. Is there anyone else who was here in the 1970s who'd like to be a part? Well, Barbara, yes, of course. And you were able to share last month as well some of your memories.
And Marilyn. I was there.
And Marilyn, I'm so glad you're here. That's wonderful.
Here I am.
Phenomenal. So really what I'd love to do right now is open up a conversation of reminiscing about what TBE was like 50 years ago. And I know that 50 years ago, we recently just had a service that was honoring a few big things that happened in the 1970s, right? The first female rabbi ordained in the United States. There was a lot going on in terms of Israel's support in the 1970s, but we were talking a little bit about how the movements were changing around those times. But really what I'd love to do is just start off by asking all of you who are here, what brought you to Temple Bethel? What is it that brought you to this community so many years ago?
My parents.
So some of us had more control over it than others, perhaps.
Go on.
Barbara, is that you, Barbara?
Yes, that's me, Barbara.
Hey, Barbara, how are you?
Hanging in there. Great to see you.
So,
Nice to see you too.
so I moved to San Pedro in the middle of the 70s, and I had a daughter who turned 5 and had her enrolled in the South Bay Jewish Camp Kadima. And
I don't.
first morning that I walked her to the bus stop, and there were a bunch of Jews there. And I went, wow, I'm not the only one coming to the bus stop. And one woman was there with 2 of her kids. And she said to me, are you new to the neighborhood? And I said, yes. She said, well, I'm the educator at the synagogue that's only a mile away. You've got to come. We're having a new member dinner in just a couple of weeks. You have to meet the rabbi. You have to come. Now, I grew up conservative, and in fact would have been Orthodox, but my father wouldn't let my mother go all that way. But from a kosher home, you know, walked to services, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, everything. I went to school on Shemini Atzeret. I mean, I didn't go to school. So that will tell you how observant we were in my house. But I said, well, all right, it's, it's the first synagogue I've run into, and it's a free meal, and I'll get to meet other Jews who live in the area. And so I went to this dinner, and I met Rabbi Lieb, who, as any of you know, back in the day, and he was only a couple of years older than me, and he had a little girl 1 year older than mine, and they became best friends and stood up at each other's weddings and all of that. But I met him and I visited the synagogue, which at the time had about 225 families. It was the biggest that had ever been. And I want to say the most amazing thing about that particular thing was there were over 200 kids in Sunday school and Hebrew school. It was a thriving young community. And between the rabbi and all the other people that I met, I was hooked. The other thing, in those days, we were still a congregation that really worked to be inclusive regardless of how you practice Judaism. And on our patio, which used to be one floor lower than where our outdoor patio is now, we had, at high holidays, we had an Orthodox rabbi who prayed both days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So if you were not comfortable in what I would call reform leaning towards conservative, service, you could go and stand with 15 or 20 other people and you could participate. It was the most amazing place. Of course, in those days, the average age of a husband in a family probably didn't exceed 40. It was very, very young. So that's what brought me in. I will just say one other thing regarding my own inclusiveness, if you will, in Bethel, was that I met a bunch of young people with young families, and I had never been in a synagogue where I felt like I wanted to know about the inner workings. And so probably in September or October, I went to a board meeting. It was open. I wanted to see what it was like to run a synagogue. And in November, one of our board members had to leave. They were being moved by their company. And I was approached immediately to take that open seat on the board. So I spent about 3 years on the board at that time, left, and of course, in the early to mid 90s, came on the board and ended up, of course, spending enough years to become the president of the temple. So my journey was very quick. Once I met a few people, like we're still saying nearly 50 years later, that once you come through our doors and you meet our people and you meet our rabbi, that you will not want to go anywhere else.
Yeah, funny for me, it was meeting Rabbi.
Don,
Thank
I have a
you
quick
so
question.
much. Yeah.
Who was the director of education that told you about the temple?
It was at the time Maxine Mayo.
Work with her.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm just going to ask because there's some interference with sound that when you're not talking, if you could just mute yourself, because otherwise it messes up the sound for everyone. But when you are when you do want to say something, please, please, please unmute. We want to hear everything that you have to say. Elaine and Morris, I would wonder if there's something that you'd like to add here. Oh, you're muted. Sorry. I had to mute everyone just because we were getting funny background noise.
Okay.
Yeah, well, no, oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're good.
Thank God I'm here to unmuted. Uh, you wanted to know what the temple was like 50 years ago, and we were here. We wanted to join a temple, and we looked around at various places because we lived in PV, and St. Peter was far. And we looked at all the possibilities, and then we came to Temple Bethel one night, and this woman came over to us and said, "I don't know who you are, but is this your first night?" And I said, "Yes." And I had 3 boys and Morris with me. And she said, "Well, let me welcome you. I'm Dorothy Paul, and I want you to meet some of the other people. So when the service is over, let me bring you over to the Oneg and introduce you to some people." It was so welcoming. And then we sat down and we could connect with Rabbi Leib because he looked at you and you knew. I don't know, the whole thing was just wonderful. And that's what I'd like to share.
Yeah, I think Elaine and I both grew up in conservative traditions in New York City, and
More Orthodox.
and really didn't go to services regularly at all. I became bar mitzvah, and then that was mostly the end of it. And when we moved down to the South Bay, we had 3 boys, and we were looking to get more involved in our Jewish life, and we were looking for something more meaningful. And as we saw what was happening here, we knew we had found it.
Mm-hmm.
And during those years, Elaine was more active. She was on the board and did
100 years ago.
Did other things, and I was busy in doing my surgical practice, but I became more involved with my son's education and their bar mitzvah and confirmation training after that. And that was really wonderful for me, because I just, it connected me more to what I was looking for.
And when it is said that when you go to Temple Bethel, you are welcomed, that's exactly our experience.
Yeah, we were talking to our oldest son, Stephen, today, who actually was bar mitzvahed in the 70s and then confirmed in the 70s. And he does come down and go to services currently, occasionally, though he's a temple member in Northern California. But he fondly remembers his time here, and he told us something we had actually never heard. He said, he said, after my confirmation class, he said, Rabbi Leib asked me if I wanted to become a rabbi. And I said, really? I said, well, that's quite a compliment. He said, yeah. He said, but I think he was disappointed when I said no.
Anyway, thank you for letting us share this with you.
That's so wonderful. And I love that you brought in not only your memory, but also your son. Sorry, I muted myself right in the middle of that.
We're fine.
So, just talking about a few other things, just what are some of your fondest memories from your time in Temple Bethel? Yeah, Don, go ahead.
Okay. So, wow, there are so many things, but number one, I was very young when I came to Bethel in terms of family, and right out of college, fairly newly married, and all of that, and got involved in education, also involved in the youth programs.
Yeah, that's what got us in trouble.
Yeah, I don't know how many of you realize that because of Bethel, Roz and I met because of a Tosby,
Because of Tosby, which has been getting me in trouble my entire life.
right. You know, we only had one couple as our youth directors, and Tosby used to run a snow weekend up in Big Bear, and we had at the time 45 kids who wanted to go on that trip. That number to me, you know, is so fabulous. And so the advisors asked if I would go. And I said, well, I'll go, but you're going to have to find another woman. I was recently divorced. And he said, well, we've got a friend. She used to be, you know, in Tosby. She former president back 10 years ago or whatever. And maybe we can get her to go with us. And so we met actually before the weekend just to have coffee and whatnot. And then few days before we were to go on the trip, we ended up going out for dinner, saw each other literally every night that week until the thing, and then went on the weekend and never saw anybody else ever again.
True.
So
Can you say a little bit about Tosby? There's some questions about what that is.
I don't remember what it's called now. I always
What-
forget.
what
Marilyn,
was
you
that?
talk-
What it was.
I just
Yes.
stuck it in. I just stuck it. Temple of San Pedro Youth.
Temple, yeah. That was it.
That
What's
was the
it
youth
called
group.
now?
Yeah, and people used to get confused with Topsy. So eventually it got changed for that and other reasons.
Yes. But it was for 9th through 12th grade, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's Speedy. But same idea,
You know,
right?
they've all changed their name. The one in San Diego used to, I can't even remember what it used to be, but now it's ETY, or I don't know. It's not close to what it was though. It used to be like with the temple's name in it, and now it doesn't have that anymore.
Yeah. Things change, but they also wouldn't be there had it not been for the earlier versions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Marilyn, when you're thinking about your involvement in the temple, are there specific things that strike you as being particularly meaningful?
Any encounter I had with Rabbi Lieb, we were his first confirmation class, and boy, did we break him in good. Jackie Pike, who has since passed away, was a phenomenal embroiderer, and he kept telling us he was wearing jeans, Levi's, and we kept saying, those are not Levi's, those are some other brand. And they're all Levi's. So we went out, we bought him a pair of 501s, and then Jackie embroidered on them. On the back pocket, she put to an awesome rabbi from a righteous confirmation class or something, along those lines. And I have a phenomenal picture. I don't know if Ross shared it with you, of him looking at his behind, trying to see what we had written. But yeah, that was his first confirmation class. And that was the first, he was very involved with us. And it's a joke. We did break him in, but he was fabulous with us. And he made the whole year. A lot of us, I think, went on to more education because of how he treated us.
And a lot of you babysat the kids.
Oh, yes, but never on Friday night, because they were never going to be the excuse for us not going to services. So so Estelle would never use any of us on Friday night, but always on Saturday night, there was a rotation of the temple girls going through. When they were going out on a Saturday, they were calling us, and they lived right up the street from us. So it was close. It was, it was fun. I think it was the first time any of us realized that a rabbi was actually a person. I'm not sure we felt that way before.
It's that change that happens around that age. Yeah.
I've got a couple of pictures of Rabbi Lieb
Mhm.
in a book. There he is. And it was a book about Hanukkah, but I thought I would share.
That's
Barbara,
beautiful.
Oh, that's great.
I need those pictures.
I will. I got
You
that at a
watch it.
book sale, and by chance it was my synagogue. It was a story about Hanukkah for the general
Is it a
public.
Torah? Is it a Torah or a book?
No, it's not. But I will
Okay.
get you. I
We
will
need
get.
to talk.
Let's see
So
where.
we would like to share.
Children's press, but I'll get it to you.
That's wonderful.
I wanted to tell you, I was finishing university and then starting to teach during the 70s, and I got married in 77, but I always kept my connection because my folks were in San Pedro until mom finally passed. But I wanted to tell you, I do remember, as Don mentioned, when we were doing double session for a number of years. And one particular year, 1976, I was teaching third graders, and I had gone to a teacher's workshop, and they had done various crafts. And I thought, well, gee, maybe I can use one of them for the students. So I thought, gee, let's make a Seder plate. And it was supposed to be like paper mache. But then it dawned on me, if we did it out of regular flour, we couldn't put it on the table because it wouldn't be kosher for Pesach. So I did not have a car of my own at the time or I may have had a car, but I wasn't driving into LA that much. And there weren't a lot of places where you could get things for Passover. You had to go into Los Angeles. So I called around, and finally, I think, is there a Bristol Farms kind of somewhere in the area? I think that's where I went about 6 weeks before Passover, and I got matzah cake meal, and I experimented. And first I was going to try to have the kids write the names of all the items for the Seder plate in Hebrew, but I tried it and it didn't work. Now, I am not an artist, but I'm very proud of this. And you will see that the date, Jewish date, is 5736, and this was 1976.
That is beautiful.
And I share it with the students.
So
That's one of my other memory is when I got married. My late husband, Sam Solomon, was a Holocaust survivor. He and his family were in hiding in Belgium. He came out, we met, introduced by a family member, and he waited till he got a teaching job. It turned out to be a block from my school. And so we planned to get married the week after school got it. So the weekend before, or the Shabbat before, his parents were very frum, Orthodox. They wanted to have the tradition of him coming up to the Torah and getting an aliyah. Except he didn't remember his Hebrew, even though he knew loads of languages. So he did the Torah brachot, and I read Torah. And then the next morning he went over, I think, to Ner Tamid, which was the closest, next best possible thing for the parents. And he did an aliyah. But on Friday night, Rabbi Lieb, may he rest, brought candy. And so they did an ufru for us where they tossed the candy. And in my jewelry box from my childhood, I still have some petrified pieces of the candy that he tossed at us.
That's wonderful. Those
Those
little
are my
memories.
1970 memories.
That's great. And Morris and Elaine, I know you had something that you wanted to share here.
well,
Or just Morris.
we had just wanted to share another Rabbi Lieb story. We had the good fortune of having him bar mitzvah and confirm all of our children, as I previously mentioned. But then he also was able to baby name all of our 6 grandchildren. And he went and he had to go up on 3 separate occasions to Northern California to do it. And on one of those occasions, he was baby naming the baby, and
The eldest of our granddaughters. Go on.
that's right. He was doing that baby naming, and a double rainbow came up in the sky, and he looked up at when he was done with his blessing, and he said, and he looked at the 2 parents. He said, "You're going to have twins."
And they did.
Guess
3
what?
years later.
Yeah, and they had the twins, and That was amazing, actually. So,
Anyway, thank you.
That's a pretty powerful story right there. Wow. I didn't realize you could see into the future like that too. That's a lot to follow.
That was a lot
That-
of granddaughters.
you're doing a pretty darn good job. I wouldn't worry about it.
Rabbi Leib always did acrostics with the babies' names at their baby namings.
That's really sweet.
Back, and if you look in the files at the temple, you'll see some of them. And I'm going to try and pull some of those out for us to display at some point, because that was something that he was known for doing for every baby naming.
And
That's beautiful.
he had such a sense of humor. I'm curious if Roz or anybody else who was whose marriage Rabbi Leib officiated, if he personalized what he told you, because I remember distinctly at mine, he listed all of the qualifications that Temple Beth El had for somebody that was going to try to marry me. And it was all of my husband's qualification. He had to speak French and be born in Belgium and teach certain things, etc. And I know that was his sense of humor.
I'll do one better, Barbara. Wasn't Don and I, it was our daughter Jennifer, who the rabbi's known almost her entire life. And my sister can attest to this because she was there. David came to Florida to officiate at Jennifer and John's wedding. And his daughter, Amy, was the matron of honor. Now, we had everything at a big hotel down there because we didn't have a temple we belonged to there, and we brought the rabbi with us. So we had a lovely dinner Friday night, and it was the rehearsal dinner, and the rabbi floated around through the room talking to everybody. And when anybody asked who he was, he said, "Oh, well, I'm the father of the matron of honor. My daughter and Jennifer are best friends." Well, this went on for the entire dinner. Then afterwards, we had a short service so that we could do an oof-roof and throw a little candy. And he then got up in front of everybody and said, "Oh, by the way, I may not have mentioned, I'm the rabbi." And you could hear groans all over the room because people had told him things that they would have never told a rabbi. And every bit of it was in the ceremony the next day. It was hilarious.
I've got to remember that trick. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's really funny.
That was the same time that he volunteered to come to my daughter's bat mitzvah at our temple in San Diego.
Thank you very much. Anybody want more water?
Hold on.
Wait, am I still there? Am I gone?
No.
You're there. You're good. Keep going.
Oh.
Sorry.
I can't remember what I was saying.
Our daughters.
He
Oh, so
volunteered.
he volunteered to come and be at our daughter's bat mitzvah. And our temple previously had a tradition of the bar bat mitzvah child reading the Torah portion, reading in English and in Hebrew, the entire Torah portion. And he walked over to me at one point, having been watching her and watching the pointer moving around, and knowing that she actually knew what she was saying. And he leaned over to me and he said, "Boy, that little acorn didn't fall far from the tree." And I knew at that point that I had succeeded.
That's wonderful.
He was great at the bar mitzvah because did you know Rabbi Lawson? Rabbi Lawson is our former rabbi. He's since retired, but he was evidently a classmate of David's. And so David started off by saying, "Oh, by the way, Marty, you still owe me for that book you didn't turn in." The congregation went nuts. I don't know that Rabbi Lawson was that happy with that. But it was pretty funny when David said it.
That's hilarious.
I think that's all. No, I'm sure I've got more, but that's all for now.
Well, all of you have stayed in connection with Temple Bethel over the years, which is why you're here now, in addition to being able to talk about some of your memories from the 1970s and some of you even before that, right? And I'm wondering, when you look back, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen over time? Not for better or worse, not a judgment call kind of a thing, but just what are some of the changes that you've kind of witnessed?
The building. It doesn't look anything like it looked when we were growing up.
Because of all the renovations and
Mhm.
additions.
Mhm.
Yeah, even the menorah candelabra is on the different side of the room.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and when Barbara and Marilyn and I were young, there was no sanctuary. It was all the social hall.
Yeah, I taught Israeli dancing out in the patio where the sanctuary is now.
Right.
I remember there being a sanctuary. When I was confirmed, there was a sanctuary.
Yeah, because that was
By
after
the
like
time you were
66,
confirmed, I
67.
was the first confirmation class in the new sanctuary in 1965.
Oh
No.
yeah, I was in kindergarten when you were in confirmation.
No, you weren't.
One of the changes is that now students can learn Torah trope and they can chant it, which we did not do. And in those days, we had a lot more English in the service. We did both Hebrew and English. And of course, not everybody, especially females, knew how to read Hebrew. So that's a change.
Yeah. Although there were other people from my age group that were bat mitzvahed, the one that comes to mind is Judy Brickman was one. Judy and Donna were among the first that had girls that had bat mitzvahs.
Yeah, and Barbara, you were number 3, right?
I was the third. Now, which Donna is that? Was that Donna Reese?
Yeah. Yeah, and Judy Brickman.
What I would say, one of the biggest things for me was that when I got here and for, let me think, probably I can tell you exactly. For 6 years, when I got here, our cantor and all the cantors before that, for the most part, were not Jewish. They read transliteration, they had lovely voices, but they were just hired basically to be there on Friday night and for high holidays.
They were
And-
cantorial soloists.
And Torah
Yeah,
and
but they weren't
They weren't
Jewish.
even cantors. I mean,
Yeah,
they
they
weren't even
weren't
cantorial soloists
Right,
because they weren't Jewish. The
Yeah.
last Jewish cantor was my uncle in the 30s, and he was a volunteer,
But-
30s and 40s.
in 1980, John Kaplan came, and when he came, he acted as, he was our cantor, and was his wife our educator, or was he our educator?
He was.
And he was our educator. And so that was the first time. And of course, it wasn't just Friday night, because we had the cantor who worked as our educator as well. So we had music in our classroom. Shortly after that, we also opened our preschool. And so we had some music in our preschool as well. All those things were brand new.
yeah, I had taught
What was
music. That's one thing I remember about Rabbi Leib. He was the first person that asked me, well, don't the students in the other classes, aren't they and the teacher bothered by singing? Because we always sang in the classrooms and nobody had ever remarked before, but we were very exuberant. So maybe that was it. But they had music and a little dancing, but it was not with the cantor. Also, the services started later on Friday nights,
Mhm.
and bar mitzvahs usually started at 11 o'clock. and they were in what we know now as a social hall, and you could hear and smell the women getting the food ready. You could smell the coffee, etc.
Because it was all right there.
Yeah, and when we had on Friday nights, we had Oneg Shabbat at the end of the social hall from which we would nowadays enter coming in through the front door. And so they would set up a table there. In those days, they had like the silver coffee and tea urns, etc. It was like the old-fashioned way. And then they'd have bowl of punch for the kids. And because I knew all of the students, I used to go and man or woman the punch bowl, and I'd tell them to wait because we had to do the Berei Pri Hagafin and Hamotzi first.
Mm-hmm.
The temple still has that silver service, don't they?
They have the one that's stainless steel that mom and dad donated. That's got their name.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the silver one became so old that it no longer functioned properly. So mom and dad donated one that's stainless steel.
I do want to bring up one thing, and I will probably talk to Tom or whatever about this, but when I first came in, for probably through my presidency in the late 90s, early 2000s, our youth groups had what I would call traditions. They ran pancake breakfasts with help from the dads, and we had car washes, and we had a whole slew of things. The Purim Carnival had probably 30 different activities, and also when Elon came, we had a dunk tank. And let me tell you, when Elon sat on that dunk tank, we raised money like you cannot believe.
Yeah, Sisterhood ran the carnival first, and then Tosby took it over and ran it for years after.
And there still is a big youth group involvement with that. So that's where it started.
How big is the youth group? How big is the youth group now?
It's not huge. It's fairly small, unfortunately, but it's a great group of teenagers, a really great group of teenagers.
And with the pandemic, of course, it makes it more challenging for them to come in and do things together, but they're still there. There's some of them are there, they're online, is my understanding.
Yeah, they've been incredibly resilient and creative, and it's a wonderful thing for sure. But everything changes over time, right? So, is there anything else about the 1970s that you want to share? Because hold on one second. My last question for all of you is going to be about your wishes for TBE in the future. But before we get to that, I just want to know if there's anything else that you've been kind of waiting your turn to be able to share that you really want to about time in the 1970s. Yeah, Roz, go ahead. Oh, no? Okay. I'm trying to read body language of everyone here. All right.
I'll ask a question.
Yeah, please.
I'm really curious on whether Don was wearing bell bottoms or flares in the 1970s.
Bell bottoms.
If you can see if you come to my house and you look at the bottom of that picture from our wedding, you will see the flare on the bottom of those pants and the boots that went with them.
Rabbi, where did you get that picture?
For me.
Yeah.
She asked.
What picture?
He doesn't tell me anything.
When she sent it out, she also asked if anybody had any pictures that they wanted to share. And I thought, well, that's perfect. It's us, it's the Bima, it's the 70s.
That's true.
And we've never looked better. So why not show it off, right?
My son Adam has a pair of bell bottoms I wore.
There you go. Oh,
Yeah, there you
I'll
go.
have to
You
put
can't fully see it, but
uh,
that's the
put
bottom of the picture.
the real thing
Yeah.
you can. I'm going to answer your question in terms of what I hope for in the future. Number one is that, and I really believe this will endure, but that we are always
10 to 8.
warm,
Leaving.
welcoming, wonderful place that Bethel is, that we never lose that love of community that we have. I think that it is unique. Um, we've been fortunate enough to own houses in other places and go to other synagogues. Um, and as good as they've been, as wonderful as they have never had the kind of, I wish I could even put it into words, but not just that the door is always open, but that when you walk through that door, that it's
What was
almost
that?
like there's a line of people who want to hug you. And, you know, like I said, I came here in my 20s and I I never I never feel like that should ever go away. It's the most wonderful thing that anyone, the connection is so good and so warm. The other thing I wish for Bethel, and I actually, after all these years, believe that it can come true, which is that we find a way to bring the young families back. We have a congregation that, although it hung together, really aged together. But because for the first time, San Pedro has become a place where young families have to go in order to afford a place, as opposed to, oh, live there? No. And therefore, Bethel being not in the middle of Palos Verdes, but on the edge, has never been. And all of a sudden, and I'm seeing it, I'm seeing the number of younger families and young kids that are coming, that hopefully we'll get back to that place where our religious school, our Sunday school has large numbers and that we can rejuvenate our youth groups and our participation.
Yep.
That's a beautiful blessing for the future. Yeah, Marilyn, did you want to say something too?
Only in that I need to say goodbye. We haven't had dinner, and so we're gonna go find some dinner now, and then I guess we're gonna get to see my sister and brother-in-law tomorrow. I can't wait. I'm so excited.
That's wonderful. And thank you so much for finding the time to be here. We're so
Oh,
appreciative of being
certainly.
able to learn from you.
Thank you.
I had wanted to mention one thing, and we did talk about it for the 60s, that there was a lovely lady, and Mrs. Lois Balsey, who played the organ.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yes, and
Yep.
she was there for years. I mean, she at least was there through my wedding, and probably Roz's
God,
too.
I remember her feet running back and forth on the pedals.
Yes, she
Oh,
was wonderful.
God, what a memory. Oh,
Don, I echo what you say. As you, many of you know, I say that Temple Bethel is like a magnet. Even though I never lost touch, when I was invited to come back and teach 7.5 years ago, that was it for me. And this, I always tell people, is my first Bethel, because for 36 years almost, I taught at Temple Bethel in South Orange County. I'm a member over 40, but the shift has happened a while back. This is my temple now. So
And we're so
hope
glad
that-
it is.
I hope that we stay around as long as we are able.
Yeah.
bye, all. It was lovely seeing all of you.
Bye.
So, Rabbi Cassie, one
Yeah,
of the things
please.
that Elaine and I have enjoyed is our temple has always been an inclusive place, but you have actually stressed and increased that if possible. And one of the things that I've seen you do, which I'd like to see in the future, and I'd love, is you reaching out to the community and getting involved in the community, because I think it's very important. So that's my 2 cents about what I'd like to see in the future.
Yeah,
Maybe 3 cents.
yeah, we could do so much good within our temple walls, and when we join together, we could do so much more good
Yes.
still. I'm so grateful to all of you for the stories you've shared, for your generosity of spirit, and the words that you've said. That amazing picture that we're keeping for all time, Roz and Don. It is a really great picture. And just to be able to be in community here with all of you, this is a great way to be able to start a new week full of memories.
Thank you for putting it together. It's been wonderful for us.
I'm so glad. And next month, I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but we're going to be moving into the 1980s. So, changing up our wardrobes just a little bit and going into that decade. And slowly, as we get toward the end of the year, we'll make our way to the present with our huge gala that'll be in December, where hopefully all of those amazing pictures and all the things, Roz, that you have been working incredibly hard to put together, that we'll be able to have some of those things on display as part of our celebration.
I've got a lot of help.
It's great. Well, thank you.
I'm just pleased that Rabbi Cassie, you are getting to know so much about the congregation in a different way. And albeit that we can't always be together, but doing this on Zoom, you have the memories, you can preserve them, but you're getting to learn so much. So I think that's very valuable for you too.
It absolutely is. I'm
You talked
super
about-
grateful for
You
that.
talked about blessing last night at the service, and I guess this is a way we can send our blessings to you.
And to everyone who's newer to the community, right? Everyone who wasn't around 50 years ago gets to learn about this rich heritage that we've had for so long. And so it really is a blessing to every one of us. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you in future Havdalot and also so many other wonderful things we have ahead.
Thank you.
And one of our teens, we were talking about Speedy, one of our phenomenal teens
Sarah.
happens to be here, Sarah. We're so grateful for all of her leadership and all that she brings to our temple community too. The future of our community, right? Great. Well, Shavua Tov, everyone.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.